Hey guys, welcome to Module 2. What I want to do in this very short video is just to go over some key takeaways from Module 1. Because many of the ideas that you learned about in Module 1 we're going to apply towards our final project, and specifically in your Milestone 1 assignment, which will be coming up in Module 3. Okay, so this past week our focus was on federal courts and federal judges. So as part of your debate in your discussion board assignment in Module 1, you learned how federal judges reach the bench, and then you debated whether or not that process is still a good process. In other words, the appointment process versus being elected. Both are debated, and as we learned and as you saw, not all of us agreed as to which it should be, appointment or elected. For this particular class, it looks like the majority of you thought that federal judges should be appointed. And then we needed to discuss that in the context of the qualifications and the duties of federal judges. All right, so that was the other components for your discussion board assignment. So hopefully you learned some ideas in terms of the duties and responsibilities of federal judges, and some of the reasons behind the Founding Fathers' decision to have federal judges receive a lifetime appointment. And quite honestly, a lot of it had to do with they wanted the federal judges to be free from interference, both politically and through public pressure in terms of their duties and responsibilities. Because remember, federal judges are asked to look at the constitutionality of laws passed by Congress. They're asked to look at the legality and constitutionality of laws that are signed by the president, and this could be in the form of presidential directives. So much, for example, of President Trump's immigration reform came under scrutiny by the federal courts. And sometimes the president prevailed and sometimes the president did not prevail. But that, I think, serves as a good example as to why the Founding Fathers believed that federal judges should be appointed and not elected. Although electing officials is how we view our democracy. In other words, we elect the President of the United States, we elect senators, we elect Congress, members of Congress. Why shouldn't we have a voice in who sits on the federal bench? Because it's a very powerful position. Hopefully you learned that in reading through your textbook, but also in terms of what's been going on in the country for the last couple of years, you can see the role of the federal courts. I mean, more and more people, especially from the political end, have been going to the federal courts to get resolution on matters, right? So, good debate, but again, that was designed for you to get a better handle as to the current process by which a judge reaches a federal bench, and some of the duties and responsibilities associated with that position, and why, again, your position, you deem that position be the most appropriate route to select federal judges. But anyhow, I enjoyed reading those posts. You guys did a great job, and we had some really good debates going on in the class this week. So thank you so much. You guys did a great job. Second thing we looked at is, now that we have a handle on the federal judges, is looking at the federal court structure. Now the federal court structure is a simple one. It's 3 tiers, right? We have the Supreme Court at the top, Circuit Court of Appeals in the middle, and then the U.S. District Courts at the bottom. Right? So what you learned in your short paper this week was you described the tiers. So you told me the primary responsibility and role for each of these 3 tiers, because each one does have a primary responsibility within the federal court system. For example, the U.S. District Courts, their primary responsibility is to serve as a trial court within the federal judicial system. It is, in fact, the only trial court. The Circuit Courts of Appeals and United States Supreme Courts are considered appellate courts. In other words, there's no witness testimony, There's no evidence presented as you would see in a trial court. This is all appellate. In other words, it's appeal. The judges will listen to attorneys argue a specific point, but they also have briefs in which the attorneys present their position so that the court could further elaborate the merits of their specific argument as they try to render their decision. So you looked at the primary responsibilities and the primary roles associated with each tier. You also were asked to look at the types of cases that might be heard within the federal court system. All right, so remember, in order for a case to be heard in the federal court system, it has to involve a U.S. constitutional issue, something from the nation's constitution, or a matter of federal law. All right, there are some other issues, diplomats and things like that, but primarily the scope of the federal judiciary is rather limited. All right, and the founding fathers did that on purpose because they did not want a far-reaching federal government and federal court system. They wanted to leave a lot of the responsibilities to states and state courts and state laws and so forth. Okay, so and then finally you had to sort of tell me how a case might reach the Supreme Court. That's important because I think it's important that since we're studying the courts that you understand how cases reach the Supreme Court and why is it that certain cases make it and certain cases don't. All right, and understand that when the Supreme Court elects not to hear a case, that the ruling from that specific circuit is the ruling. All right, for that particular circuit. All right, and we talked about in my short module lecture circumstances under which the Supreme Court might elect to hear a case. So hopefully you had a chance to watch that because Supreme Court is very selective on its cases, right? So for example, if two circuits within the United States rule differently on the same basic fact pattern of a legal question, then the Supreme Court is interested in that case because they need to make sure that all the circuits are on the same page. If a lower court invalidates federal law, the Supreme Court is very interested in that case because you just can't have trial courts, district courts, or circuit courts invalidating federal law. I mean, the Supreme Court needs to decide whether or not that is appropriate or not appropriate. And then there are those cases that we discussed that raise serious constitutional questions, same-sex marriage, segregation, discrimination. Those type of cases are ones that are of national importance, right? Police search and seizure, for example. Cases of national importance are those cases that the Supreme Court is likely to hear, right? So you learned about that. So you learned about the tiers, the primary role for each tier, the types of cases that might be heard by each tier, and the process by which a case might reach the Supreme Court. And this is important because we're going to be discussing these same things in your upcoming Milestone 1 assignment. So your Milestone 1 assignment, you're going to be expanding your ideas and learning more about those. Hey, sorry about the interruption there with the dogs. We had a FedEx delivery. Anyhow, so all those elements, how do they all come together in understanding the federal court structure, right? So that was the purpose of the short paper assignment. But there are going to be certain key takeaways from these assignments that are going to apply right back to your Milestone 1 assignment, all right? So this coming up week in Module 2, our focus now is going to shift to state courts. We're going to look at state court structure. All right, that's going to be your discussion board assignment this week. So you're going to notice how each state basically is a little bit different. All right, and so that's what's important. So select your own home states. That way we'll have a variety of states to review. And then just follow the specific prompts associated with the discussion board assignment. Also, you could take a look at my announcement. And then I also posted my thoughts on this week's discussion assignment in the discussion board for that particular Module 2 work. Okay, so you can take a look at that. Also this week, you're going to be looking at, you're going to create a job description for federal and state court judges. Purpose of this assignment is so that you can learn to differentiate the difference between the two. And some states, how a judge reaches the bench is much different than the federal level. So it's interesting to understand how this happens. a lot of this may be tied to historical facts. Many states still use justice of the peace courts, city courts, mayor's courts. And those tend to be more East Coast type things. West Coast, you're not going to find a whole lot of those type of courts. But a lot of it can be tied to an historical perspective. All right, so that's what we're looking at this week. So you're going to be basically creating a job description for federal judges and state court judges. You're going to provide a job description for each and then deciding which judge, state, or federal based on their caseload, types of cases, and amount of public and media scrutiny has a more challenging job. Okay, so I think this will be a fun exercise. You'll get a good understanding as to the criteria that's needed for each of these types of judicial positions, federal and state. Okay. Remember, your short paper assignments need to be supported with at least 3 sources and cited and referenced using APA style. All right. So again, this last week, we learned about federal courts, and hopefully you walked away with some key ideas as to how this court's structured and why their design is that. Hope you had a chance to look at the short videos I posted in the module announcement, because there was a nice short lecture on state or on federal court structure, and I also posted one for state court structure using California as an example. Okay, I think that's it, guys. Again, we're off to a great start. If you have any questions or I can help in any way, don't hesitate to let me know. All right, guys. See you in Brightspace. Bye.